So I met Kathy through one of my mentors. We're in a similar community on school where we kind of stay for our connections. And when we first met, I was like, she helps people write books, and I write books. And Dale will be talking after Kathy. We're letting a boy in the house, y'all. And I trust him. He's one of my coaches. And what I recognized whenever I started working with Dale was, yeah, I do write books, but they're not books, they're journals. They're different. When I do mine talk Thursday or Friday, whatever day I'm doing mine, I'm going to talk to you about a new journal that I have. But I don't write books. And what I've recognized as I got more connected to Kathy was the reason I hadn't written a book. I've told a little bit of my story in presentations and like a little chapter here or there, tiny bits and pieces, but I wasn't ready to tell my story. And God has taken me on this crazy journey, and I believe for a reason. And so now Kathy is my writing coach, and I'm working with her and going through the process, and she does a great job. But March 8th will be 10 years since I drew the line in the sand to say I'm fighting for me. This BS is not working. I'm not doing this anymore. And so March 8th of 2025 is when my new book that's actually telling part of my story is going to be released. I'm just going to say is. I'm not finished with it yet, y'all. But I'm going to say it is. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to claim it, and it's going to be great. And so, Kathy, I am so thankful that you are in my life because I believe that I was meant to write this book, and I don't know that I would do it. I know I wouldn't be doing it right now. And I think that there's women out there that need to read my story, that they'll get some healing from it, they'll get some growth from it. And because I'm connected to you, that's happening. So I'm so thankful for you. And I would love for you to spend your time talking, whatever. I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I know it's going to be great. And ladies, the drill, comment in the chats if you have stuff along the way, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So take it away, Kathy.
Thank you, Sam. And I just want to let everybody know when Sam committed to writing her book, she has just taken off with it. She has been very devoted to it, and the progress she has made in such a short time is wild. So I'm really proud of you, Sam. And I'm really excited about this summit that you're doing it now because it's the beginning of a new year. And what better time is there than to start your year off learning about gratitude? Gratitude is such a powerful weapon that we have in our arsenal, yet we forget to use it. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm like, what would happen if soldiers went into battle and they went out onto the front line and forgot to use the weapons that they were carrying? What would happen to them? Surely they would face defeat. So what happens to us when we forget that we possess this powerful weapon called gratitude and don't use it? We too can face defeat. It'll just come in a different way. It can show up in discouragement, frustration, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, low self-worth, complacency, and even sickness. And I think you've heard a little bit about that throughout this summit already about how it can affect your health. So if we have this powerful weapon at our disposal, why is it that we forget to use it? There could be a lot of different reasons, and I'm going to go through 6 points with you that can potentially be why we're forgetting to use it. Number one is we may not be thinking of gratitude as a weapon that can defeat the enemy. And that enemy are those things I just talked about, the anxiety and the depression and so forth. But gratitude is a very powerful weapon to really help us overcome those things. And you've heard stories of overcoming already. So it is a powerful weapon. And number two kind of goes along with number one. Number two is we may not understand the power of gratitude and how to use it. So how to use it is you just start implementing it. You just consciously make the decision to express gratitude for something in your life. And the great thing is you don't have to figure out how to make the power work because the power is activated when you put gratitude into action. It's the byproduct of you putting gratitude into action. So number 3 is we can take things for granted in our life. And we don't typically take things for granted consciously. It's a subconscious thing that happens to us. But the things in our life or even people in our life, we can take for granted. We just assume they're going to be there always. And again, like I said, it's not necessarily a conscious thing that we're doing, but it happens. And then that can lead to number 4, which is we can become desensitized to the blessings around us. And we may not even think about them as being blessings, but we are surrounded by blessings everywhere we look. If you look around the room that you're in right now, probably everything in there or most everything in there is a blessing. For instance, you're watching the summit. How are you watching it? You're watching it on your phone or your computer. Those are blessings. There are people in this world that don't have either one of those things. And so we have to train our brain to think of these things as blessings. And then desensitization can lead to number 5, which is complacency. We can just get busy in our day-to-day lives, and aren't we all busy, right? And with that, we can forget to express gratitude. Or worse yet, we can say, it really doesn't matter. It's not that important. Everything's fine. We know that's not true, especially after hearing some of the stories we've heard already in the summit. So those are 3 things: taking things for granted, desensitizing, and complacency, that we need to do a self-check to make sure that we are not falling into that trap. And then number 6 is emotions. Our emotions are like a yo-yo. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. They're so fickle. And what happens is, especially if you're going through a difficult time in your life, those emotions become front and center. And then we start to dwell on them. And especially if you're going through something difficult, it's a negative emotion, right? It's most likely you're fretting, you're stressed, whatever it is. And if we continue to dwell on the negative, we're going to spiral down into those things that I talked about before from the enemy, which are the anxiety and all those different things. And that makes it difficult to think about gratitude. So what can we do to keep gratitude alive in our life? It's a discipline that we need to learn and practice it daily, which can take some practice to learn how to do that. I think we all express gratitude in some way occasionally in our life. I think it's just a natural thing within us that we express gratitude. But to incorporate it daily in our lives, that's a discipline. That's something we have to consciously decide to do. And that's really hard to do when you're going through something difficult. But if you make that conscious decision to do it, it can also help with your healing. Gratitude opens our hearts to receive healing. And I think that's so powerful. And if you're in a place right now where you're thinking, well, I don't really need healing, I'm doing really well, that's wonderful. That's great. We want to be in that place. But I also want to point out that gratitude opens us up to receive blessings. And it can help us to keep a positive attitude or help us to continue to develop that positive attitude. So it opens up our hearts to receive. It's a choice, it's a mindset. And the more you express gratitude, the more your attitude can improve. And the more your attitude can improve, the more joy you can have in your life. And the more joy you have in your life, the more you will express gratitude. So it's this cycle where you start with gratitude and you end up with gratitude. So how does gratitude become a secret ingredient for authors? Because that's the title of my talk tonight. So to get into that, I want to explain how I became a coach for Christian nonfiction authors, because I think it's going to help tie it all together. So nonfiction books are based on truth. And nonfiction books, there's a wide variety of topics, right? It could be a finance book. It could be how to start a business, how to market. It could be a weight loss journey. It could be a gratitude book. It can be your testimony. There's just no end to the topics. They just need to be based on truth. But what that also means is most of the time, nonfiction books are based on some experience that author has to that topic. I personally have gone through traumas in my life, similar to some of the women on this summit already. When I was in college, I was date raped. When I was in my 30s, a guy broke into my home and he sexually assaulted me. Later in my marriage, I married a great guy, but then he met a really creepy guy who brainwashed him, and both of them ended up being very abusive to me. And I'm thankful to have gotten out of that relationship alive. It was very traumatic, and I didn't want to live. I know what it's like to be in that dark spot and not be able to feel like you don't have anything to be grateful for. So I can relate to that and know if you're in that spot, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So about 12 years after the last big trauma in my life, which has now been about 20 years ago, I think, God gave me an assignment to write a book about the healing journey that he took me through. And I tell you, it was layer after layer, because all of these other traumas that I went through, like I said, it started in college. I never had any help for it. So I had years and years, decades of trauma built up. And so it was layer after layer that he had to work on, like peeling an onion back. But because I had so many years, like 12 years or 13, whatever it was, between when he gave me the assignment and when the last thing happened, I had a lot of years of healing under my belt. If he'd asked me probably 5 years before that, I might not have been ready to write it. God knows it's this perfect timing. So after I published the book, I felt like he was calling me to help support Christian nonfiction authors, to give them a safe place where they can come and share their faith and get that spiritual support, along with learning the nuts and bolts of how to write and publish a book. And so that's when I started my business, Your Inspired Books, Coaching and Publishing Services. And so I coach my clients to write out of a place of healing, not in the middle of your pain. Now, by all means, I do encourage you to write when you are going through your healing process, whether you are journaling entries or you're writing in a story format, whatever you want to write, do it, because to get those emotions out of you and onto paper is going to help with your healing instead of keeping it all pent up inside. But don't publish your book just yet, and you'll see why in a moment. So our words are super powerful. In fact, the Bible tells us that there is life and death in the power of the tongue. It's a lot of power. So we really need to choose life. We need to watch our words. And I want to share with you a story, a true story, that demonstrates the power of our words and the power of gratitude. So after I wrote the book that God assigned me to write, my first book, I asked a friend of mine to read it and give me some feedback. And she had told me that another friend of hers had just published a book, so she was reading her book and then she would read mine. So after she read both books, she came back to me and she said to me, I could tell that your book was written out of your healing, because it was very hopeful. And she said, I felt like we were just sitting around my kitchen table and you were telling me your story and the things that happened to you, but how God restored you and healed you. On the other hand, she said, my other friend's book was very triggering to me emotionally. And she said she couldn't even finish reading the book. Now, my friend had gone through her own type of trauma, and this other friend of hers had gone through something similar. And what my friend said is she could feel the anger in the writing. She wasn't talking about her friend saying, oh, when I went through this, I felt angry, whatever. No, she was talking about that the book was written out of anger, not out of healing. And so that's why it was so triggering. She was still in her pain. And actually, she wasn't in that situation anymore, but she was still in her pain. Gratitude was a very important part of my healing. I was so thankful for everything that God did for me, getting me out of those situations, for all the people, family, friends that surrounded me and supported me. I had a lot to be thankful for. And apparently that came through in my writing. So when you are writing this type of a book, if you have that desire to do that, it's really important to have the support in there that your reader's looking for. When somebody buys a book, it's because that topic is of interest to them. And they want to learn about it, especially a nonfiction book. They want to know about that topic. They're either going through it, or they're in the middle of it, or they're on the other side of it, or they know somebody going through it, and they're looking for hope or guidance, or they just want to learn about this. And if you don't offer that for them, you're not helping them, and you could potentially hurt them the way my friend was hurt. So fostering an attitude of gratitude is going to show up in every area of your life, including your writing. So gratitude is your secret ingredient because the words that you write are going to come out of a different place. They're going to come out of healing. Whereas an author who is focused on negativity, that writing is going to be much different. So I want to give you an exercise that you can do to put this theory into, test it yourself if you want. So there's a couple different things. First of all, take a piece of paper or notebook or whatever and start writing down everything you can think of that you're grateful for. Big things to little things. I've already mentioned some things. Do you have food in your refrigerator? Do you have a bed to sleep in? You have a phone? You have a computer? Just look around your room. Start making a list and you can keep adding to it. That list can serve as a backup for you when you're having one of those really dark days and you feel like I have nothing to be thankful for. And trust me, I've been there. And I'm telling you things that I did in my healing process. That's why I'm sharing them. But do that. And then if you have that dark day, pull it out and read one or two of them. You don't have to read them all, just pick one or two and read it out loud so you hear the gratitude, because there's so much power in our spoken word. Next, I want you to journal for 30 days. If you like to journal already, then this is not going to be a tough exercise. If you don't like to journal, and that was me, it's going to be hard to do it, but I want to encourage you to stick to it. So journal each day. I don't care what you journal about, how you feel, what happened that day, whatever. But then I also want you to write down one thing that you are grateful for. And if you're having one of those really bad days, pull that list out and pull one off of the list and add it to your journal. So that's where that list can really come in handy for you. Then after the 30 days, go back and read those 30 entries. And hopefully you're going to start to see a little improvement in the tone of what you're writing. 30 days isn't a lot, but you still might see some improvement. Then do another 30 days. And then after that 30 days, read those and see how those sound. Better yet, start from day 1 and go to day 60. And if you've given this some really sincere effort to practice gratitude, you will see some improvement in your attitude, in the tone of what you're writing. And the purpose of this exercise as it relates to being an author is so that you can see how gratitude really does affect your writing. As an author, gratitude can be the secret ingredient to helping you write a phenomenal book that can just bring such a powerful message and impact other people's lives. And I'll give you an example of that. So after I published my book, I received an email from a woman who was laying in a hospital bed And she said she had purchased my ebook, read my book that day while she's laying in the bed, hospital bed, and she emailed me to thank me for writing the book. And she shared with me that she had been in an abusive relationship. And after reading my book, she had so much hope that she too could heal and have a happy, healthy life. And I tell you what, that email, it just blessed me. And I get chills now every time I talk about it, because that's what it's about. That's what sharing our stories are about, is impacting other people's lives. But that wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have been able to reach a point of gratitude. So let me ask you this. Have you read a book that's impacted your life? How did it impact your life? What did it do for you? Do you have a story that you think could help somebody else out? I would imagine that you do. I think that we all have a story to tell. Joy said that too. So if you've ever dreamed of writing a book, I want to encourage you to give it some serious thought. If you're in the middle of a hurt, go through your healing process first. Doesn't mean you can't start writing some things down, but your healing is more important than anything. And you don't need any special skills. When God gave me that assignment, I didn't like to write. I'm like, but God, I don't want to write. I don't like to write. And he's transformed me. Like, he has taken me down a path I never expected. So don't let that stop you. And if you want some help, I'd be more than honored to work with you and help you through that journey and get your book published, because I'm sure that you have a message that can really impact the world. We have a great group of authors. Again, I work with Christian authors. The books don't have to be spiritual in nature. It's just a group to support Christians who want that spiritual support. And I only work with nonfiction books as well. But they're a great group of people. Like, Sam is in it, and we support one another, and I welcome you in it. So feel free to reach out to me for a clarity call or get my free ebook, and you'll have that information through Sam. But I want to leave you with this. I can honestly say that you will never have any regrets for the investment that you put into fostering gratitude in your life. It will pay off in ways that you've never expected. Gratitude is your secret ingredient, and it can be your secret weapon as well. So thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Kathy. That was so good. You call it a secret ingredient, secret weapon. I call it the powerhouse to creating a life you love. So good. So you said you didn't like to write before God called you to write your book. Well, I didn't like women, and he called me to work. Just laugh.
Oh, you can
You're so cute. You are so cute. So I do want to say Linus is not here right now, but she will probably watch the replay. I just thought of this. Today's her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
I'm just going to say happy birthday. Happy birthday. I don't sing to save your ears, but happy birthday. And so I know she'll watch the replay. I meant to do that earlier. So if you have any questions for Kathy, I'm looking, fostering gratitude is my theme and my mission now. Thank you, Cindy. And Joy said, thank you for the shout out. I'm glad to be on the spiritual. Y'all are aligned in so many ways. So good. So good. Yes. So good. So let me just, knowing you, I wanted to think just about, you talked about the 30-day and then the 60-day, and you talked about how that can tie to your writing and it'll help you improve your gratitude process. I'm just curious if having gratitude and you go through this process, do you think it'll help improve like creativity for coming up with ideas or the way to write?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because as I said, gratitude opens up your heart to receive, not just receive healing, but receive blessings. And so when you open up your heart, you're letting other things in. And as you write, the act of writing also stimulates creativity in your brain. Now, I can't explain that from a scientific point of view because I'm not a scientist or a doctor or anything like that. I just have read up on it a little bit. And the act of writing stimulates the brain and can spark creativity. So by all means, it can help with that.
Yeah, it was so good. Cindy had commented in the chat something. Let me see. She was saying, yeah, she just literally said what you said. Taking it, gratitude opens up your heart and stimulates the brain. And so it's so true. And I can't, so here's a confession for you ladies. I want gratitude is if I had to start over. That's why we're doing this. I believe that I would start with gratitude. I can't explain how it works though. So like yesterday, Mike and listen, some of them sharing about the neural pathways and like I get some of that, but I don't know why it works. Or how it works. I just know it works. And if you're just not sure yet, I would say take Kathy up on her challenge of do the 30 days. See, what's it going to hurt? All right. We're all talking about trying some new things and maybe be able to try something new. Joy said 3 minutes, right? Maybe Ty and Kathy and Joyce together and do 30 days of 3 minutes, right? And put it all together. So I thought of one more question for that. I don't see any. I see Dr. Jen is in Australia. She tuned in late. Neuroplasticity, and that creates new creative pathways. Yes, that's part of it too. But
Yeah.
one of the things I know is like you mentioned the word desensitized, and I'm typing out in the chat all your tips. And I said, I can't spell that word, but you know what she said. So I don't try and do that. But so I'm curious though, and I know that I struggle with some of this a little bit about having a little bit of self-doubt, and wondering if what they have to share is of value, or if they're struggling to find some gratitude in their writing because they don't believe in themselves on some level. I know I've had to deal with that and get to the other side of it. So I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I dealt with that. It's like this assignment, I never had any aspirations of writing a book ever in my life or writing anything. And so it was scary to step out and do it. And I didn't think that I was qualified to do it. But I was obedient and I stepped out of the comfort zone and I just did it. And so that's the first thing is just step out of your comfort zone and you'll be surprised at how talented you really are. But also, one big thing that I talk to my clients about is what's your why? Why do you want to write this book? What's the end goal? And for me, like getting that email from that lady in the hospital, I tell you, if she's the only person that read that book, it was worth it. It was worth it because it gave her hope. And so that was one of my end goals. So what's your end goal? And when you can focus on that end goal and try to set aside all those personal feelings, those self-doubts or whatever, and think about the other person. Instead of making it about you, make it about your reader, the person that needs your message. Then I think it becomes easier to focus on your message and just write it. Instead of putting that
Yeah.
focus on you, focus on who you're trying to reach and why you're
Yeah.
trying to reach them.
Yeah, that's so good. Whatever we talk about in Safe Heart Connections, I never say who said something, like it's all private. What happens in the room stays in the room. But I had a woman recently share something with me that she had no idea how important it was to me. And we were on a group call, and she made a comment about how I create safe places for women to share their heart and their emotions and their feelings. And before I started my journey, I think Darla mentioned she was 44. Well, I was 44 when I started my journey, as well, 43, 44. And I hadn't allowed myself to feel, like everything was shut off. And I don't consider myself an empath, but I am very empathetic. And to be in that space of not being able to feel to feeling and it all gushing in, for me to now be creating a space for women to feel.
Full circle.
Yeah. And so I wrote that down. Coach Dale, who should be joining us in just a few minutes, I was coaching with him recently, and we need to write that down. So it's the first thing you see when you get out of bed, because there's going to be hard days, but what's your why? And so what I'm tying that to is my why for what I do all this for is to truly make it to where women don't have to feel like they're alone going through life, feeling like they're stuck, there's no hope. There is no light. We were talking in the chat. You mentioned there being light coming forward at the end, and to be able to allow women to create a space for women to be able to feel. That was never on my radar. On my radar was to get the heck out of Dodge and to be like, I can't do this anymore. The one constant and all this shit is me, and I got to do something about it. And now the fact that I get to help other women is just amazing. And to be connected to you and all these women that are here and the women that are speaking, it's just amazing. And so, Kathy, I thank you. I thank you for your time and for your ability to speak life into our group and to me and to encourage us to tell our story. Because even if you never, and I know Joy mentioned this too, even if you never publish your thing, write it down. My mom, somebody said in the chat on, Carrie mentioned on YouTube, does it need to be physical writing or can it be typing? And in my knowledge, and I'll let you answer this too, but what I understand is that there's something that happens in your brain when you physically write. There's a kinesthetic something and it transfers. It's different than just typing. And so my answer would be writing is better, but if you're not going to write it, type it where you can do the brain dump. Do you have some thoughts around that?
I agree with that completely. You're spot on. The physical act of writing stimulates the brain in a different way than if you're typing it. And again, can't explain it because that's over my head, just what I've learned. But yeah, I agree. And if you really struggle with writing out by hand and you want to do it on the computer, that's better than nothing. You're still releasing that out of you, and it's going to help with your healing.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Kathy, so
Thanks,
much.
Sam.